Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and I'd like to say a big thank you to any new subscribers. I really appreciate you. This past weekend, I devoted roughly 5 to 6 hours over the course of 2 days to working through another category of crafting, which are my knitting supplies. So that's everything from yarn, notions, needles, pattern books, patterns, magazines, books, you name it. Anything that had to do with knitting, I tackled it. And it was tough stuff, as you will see. So enough blabbing and let's get on with it.
The knitting extravaganza. Okay, I don't have as much as some people do, but I haven't knitted since probably 2010, but I have really and truly a fair stash of yarn. This is where we get to the nitty-gritty. This bag, my yarn swift, some needles, needle roll, needles, measures, gauges, calculators. These knitting needle sets, these are actually really lovely, kind of everything you need, and they're interchangeable needles. This Denise set was my first interchangeable needle set, bought for me by a very dear friend. So this sparks joy. I've got some work to do. Oh, you're supposed to hang this to keep all your circular needles organized. So laying it down for years doesn't really help the cause. All right. Knitting magazines, more knitting magazines, and then sort of specifics like Rowan, Rebecca. If you knit, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then I have knitting books as well, and then some single patterns. So I have some fun ahead of me today and tomorrow. I think this will probably be a 2-day task. The buttons were easy. This is what I'm keeping. And this is what I'm purging. Four measuring tapes. This is a wonderful example of the sort of lunacy that takes a hold of you when you start knitting and crafting. More insanity. These are row counters. Yes, apparently I needed 3 of them. No idea. Stitch markers, and a whole slew of stitch markers in there. Just when you thought you had the madness under control, you find another measuring tape and 3 darning needle kits. I'm starting with books and magazines now, and the first one here is this Morehouse Farm Merino Knits, and this does spark joy. It's more than just a knitting book, it's also the story of the 2 people that started this farm. Boutique knits. Ooh, I love this. Anything that has this kind of vintage feel definitely sparks joy for me. This vintage knits, I like this. I'm not sure that it sparks joy. Rowan magazine, vintage knits. Oh, this sparks joy. It's a visual feast, and this is definitely staying. So the rest of these I'm going to work through on my own. And as for the magazines, I know that the KonMari method and pretty much every other purging method says don't open the magazine and start going through it because you'll never end up getting rid of them. I do need to look through them because I need to see what patterns are in there that speak to me. These are the needles that I still need to go through. This is what I've decided to keep. There are yarn requirements, This is the Knit Picks circular, they're stainless steel circular needles. It's a set, the Denise needle set. Some buttons, crochet hooks, calculator. This is a little gauge guide. These are patterns, mostly ones that I've purchased. The knitting books that I'm keeping, 2 Rowan knitting books, and then these are all the knitting magazines. I know this still seems like a lot, but wait till I show you what I've purged. All my knitting notions are in here, so now I only have 1 tape measure. And then also things like cable, needles, etc. The yarn I'm keeping, this hand-painted yarn, 3 skeins of this Jaeger Matchmaker, and then some of this, this green. I'm also keeping classic silk. I have a ball winder. I have a Swift, and actually I know that it's at my mother's house because I just saw it. I don't know how they got separated, but I'm keeping the ball winder and the Swift. And actually, I'm going to purge this. Here you can see all the books, magazines that I'm getting rid of. These little yarn bits and ends, I'm just going to either donate these or throw these out. I am keeping the basket. This circular needle holder and organizer and the circular needles in it. All these knitting notions. This is a wraps per inch, some buttons, stitch markers, counters, and then here is all the yarn that I'm getting rid of, and I'm adding the classic silk to it. So that's nearly my entire yarn stash, but let me give you a full-on.
In spite of the fact that I didn't get through to the knitting needles, I do feel as if this was a successful adventure. I'm very motivated to keep going. I think what I'm going to do is tackle the needles today so that all of my knitting stuff has been completely done, and then I'll be ready to move on to the next phase. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.